Bowling for All Seasons, Season 2. I'm Dan.
I'm Ben, and we're back.
We are actually back.
We've been away a long time. We are kicking off the season in good form, I think. We've got our first repeat guest, Kevin Gosztola, journalist, talking with some updates from this week on the Julian Assange case happening over here in England. There's some very interesting new developments in that. And then also talking to Kevin about Daniel Hale, whistleblower who revealed the drone program under the Obama years and was sort of fell off out of the public consciousness and then was put back under scrutiny in the Trump years, and then now has been sentenced to prison under the Biden administration. So we get into all that, and then we also get to talk. Kevin was kind enough to talk to us a little bit about Cuomo too, and get his opinions on that as well. But it's a good conversation. Kevin always really offers really sharp and nuanced and even-handed, I think, insight on very difficult subject matter. So I was happy to have him.
Yeah, no, it's a great conversation. Again, I think we mentioned this in the pre-show, but what I love about Kevin is that he's such a knowledgeable guy, but also comes at it with a moral lens at the end of the day. You know, he's not trying to like put his opinion down your throat. I mean, it's obvious in the subject that he writes about what he cares about. Yeah, when we talk to him, he gets kind of worked up in a really enjoyable way.
Yeah, Kevin has a moral clarity that I think we lack, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a format for the show today for season 2, episode 1, just to make sure that we can kind of cover everything that happened while we were away, because we missed so much, so much. Yeah,
we and we're barely paying attention as it was happening. I would try and scribble down notes sometimes, but it's summer and I've been drinking, so you know.
Yeah. So again, the disclaimer is we are spreading misinformation, so do not get your politics from us. Well, can you explain like kind of our thinking for the show?
Yeah. Obviously, we've been away for several weeks. We thought it could be good to just do sort of a rapid fire recap of some of the big stories we missed, and acknowledge that we don't want to take too much time on them. They are old news for the most part, but we thought we'd just go through a quick fire round of what we missed, what we thought about it, what we think about it now. Our producer Joe is going to run the stop clock. He's going to be quite militant with the time, and it's going to be how much, Joe? 2 minutes, right? So yeah, we're going to get 2 minutes. Joe's going to call out the subject, and then he's going to tell us to stop after each one, and then we'll move on to the next and just see what happens.
Ben, can you tell listeners where they can get a VFAS stopwatch if they would like one?
You can order from the Borders website. They're available on Borders, or go to your local Borders. You can also find them on the dark web. And also, if you don't have access to the dark web, Infowars.com, shop Infowars. I think it's right after the ammonium nitrate cleansing dick pills.
So you can get it there. Various outlets.
All right, so let's get the clock up. And whenever you're ready, Joe, we're ready.
Okay, so the first one is Cuomo.
I was telling Ben this in the pre-show, but Schadenfreude is certainly an overused term, but I have been celebrating a little bit with this. Ben, what do you think?
It feels good. I didn't think he was going to resign, to be honest. I really thought he was going to full trumpet, weather the storm. I definitely thought he would get impeached, just because there's so much bad blood. And so many people calling on it. I don't know. It's nice to watch. It's nice to see him go down after just the absolute leviathan he has been over the last year and everything else. But it feels a little hollow to me in that, he's gonna escape the nursing death things. I remember we talked to Ross Barkan about this, of like that, he never would have been under the scrutiny at all, or like this never would have happened had it not been a sexual sexual harassment allegations, when it's like he has the blood of thousands of people on his hands, and that sucks. I mean, not to discount the sexual allegations, which are fucking terrible and weird. Like, all of his stuff is very, and then like, I don't know, did you see any of his concession speech too, which was like, or his resignation speech? He did not concede anything, where he's like, I thought I knew where the line was, but it seems the line has been redrawn. And it's like, sort of like blamed like millennials or something, or like woke culture, I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, I missed out on that, but I know that Kevin mentions this, and I don't want to give away too much from the interview, but does Cuomo actually call it cancel culture in the resignation?
Very close to, I think.
Enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's it.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
We have Cuba.
Ben, why don't you start with this one out?
Yeah. Anytime, and I hope we can get someone on to also talk about this and to talk about Haiti, but like anytime this stuff like protests in Cuba or Venezuela, or pick your country, are getting headlined in the news, my bullshit detector like immediately turns on. I'm just like, it's just like President of Haiti getting assassinated. It's like, how is that not the CIA? I don't believe that it's not. This is going back to another guest we had talking to Joel about this, about coup attempts in Venezuela. It was just like, it seems to this, it's just like, it's just U.S. policy to antagonize as much as possible. So you really need to take these protests with a grain of salt every time you hear about them, one way or the other, whether it's pro-government, anti-government. I think that's something that gets lost in the ether always, is like, first of all, it was not like the entire Cuban people rising up, and some of the people at those protests were pro-Cuban government. So there's that, and then like, I don't know if you saw, they had posts of like, people were posting on Twitter like, look at the uprising or the protests in Havana with like tens of thousands of people, and it was fucking Buenos Aires after they won the Copa America.
That brings up something I want to talk about with this, and that's like, so many people I feel like fell for this this idea that like, Cuba is so oppressed, and that like actually it's such a nuanced approach, and they don't mention the embargo at all.
So lift the sanctions.
They followed the Biden line. It's
and then Biden imposed more sanctions. I mean, like, I have no love for the Obama years, but one of the best things he did with this time was actually start to normalize relations. And it's like, for Biden, it's like the easiest layup possible. Just like, let it go. Like, let it go. Damn it. Okay. That's all right. Next up, I like the pressure.
Yeah,
exquisite pressure, we call this.
I like it. Simone Biles and the Tokyo Olympics.
Okay, who gives a shit about the Olympics? First of all, the Olympics do not matter. There's.
I'm going to keep talking because I really been wanting to talk about this one, and I think it's just all respect to Simone Biles. She's clearly like an amazing athlete. I hated the story because it clearly became this win for left and right media. You get people to like completely say it's like, oh, Simone Biles like doesn't represent America, mental health, like she's a wimp or something like that, where in like the left media gets to just complain about people complaining about Simone Biles. It was the definition of confirmation bias, right? Because everybody got to have exactly the story they wanted. Like, first of all, all the people on the right who were acting like she was a villain, it was like, it's fucking gymnastics. Okay, first of all, it's gymnastics. Chill the fuck out. And also, Simone Biles is a national treasure. She's amazing. Like, I love watching gymnastics, and like, she is, the best at what she does, the best ever to do it. And also, like, she's doing dangerous flips and shit, and she wasn't there. It's absolutely fine to go, you know what, I can't compete at the level that I need to compete right now. I need to sit out. And the thing that annoyed me from the left, I guess, was that it was again like, oh, she's either a villain or a hero. It's like, I don't know if like that makes her a hero, of just like, it was like, it sounds like you just made the right choice for what you needed.
but it doesn't need to be this like, yay, you are brave kind of thing.
But it kind of comes back to like the digital journalism standpoint of this is like you have to have so many think pieces saying that like Simone Biles is national treasure, like fuck the haters, and then on the other side of it, the right wing side of it, it's like this is why Simone Biles sucks, you know, and you know it all matters how many shares you get from that.
Yeah, and both. I mean, the right is definitely way dumber on this, but if you have a passionate take on either way, they're both pretty fucking dumb. Time. All right. Haiti. Oh yeah. Well, so we already touched on this a little bit, but yeah, Haitian president was assassinated in really kind of like fantastic
Scarface way or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and like it was kind of. I mean, it was incredible when it happened because I was like, it seemed like something that would have happened in like the '60s.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and it blew me away. Like, when was the last time like a head of state got assassinated like that? I mean, at least in the, in the Western world. But again, as to my point before, like, if you don't immediately jump to that the CIA was somehow involved with this, you're fucking dreaming, and like grow up.
Yeah, like, I think the media is finally catching up with that. Like, I know within 2 days afterwards, and we were sharing this in the group chat, that it started to come out like there was already American contractors that they could find that were involved.
It came out that some of them were American and the rest of them were all Colombian, which like
again, and I think that's like more
we're all American trained.
Right, exactly. And I think that's like such a valuable part of the story, and something it reminded me a lot of the conversation that we had with Clarum and how she's grown up her entire life with the Civil War. And like, how do you bring someone back into society who's been militant?
Yeah, well, they're all School of Americas type fucks or whatever whatever they call it now. Damn it. Help me out, Tim. Let's go. Yeah, and
no,
like,
it has
like,
more
all of it,
now,
all of it stank too. Of like this is some sort of a, like sophisticated operation, and all of the guys who carried out the op were like caught at their Airbnb down the road. It was like, does nobody else think this is like completely fucking insane? Like, they all just got like Oswalded. Yeah. I don't buy it one bit. I don't buy it one bit. Like, oh, time. All right.
Eviction moratorium.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing from this for me is that the White House and I think Democrats and obviously Republicans basically got caught red-handed with the influence of the real estate lobby. And go Cory Bush.
Yeah, it was great I appreciate what the squad finally stepped up, because I've been critical about them in the past, and there's still stuff to be critical of them within this. They're talking about big bad Nancy Pelosi, and it was like, well, you all voted her in. Like, some of this is on your hands, but I really hope this spirit keeps going and that they start conducting themselves like the Tea Party did in the early 2000s, and actually be like an insurgent wing of the party, because like we saw it from like whatever your opinion is on the Tea Party, and I don't like what they stood for or what they did, but they got shit done. And like the squad has just as many, if not more, members at this point.
Yeah, it's becoming like a distinction without a difference.
Yeah, and you can do this shit. Like, it fucking worked. And well, and again, we need to clear, that is a big caveat there, because they extended it by like 60 days. So this is something that takes a much deeper dive. Like, people got a little breath of oxygen, but they're still drowning. We still need to worry about the fact that like, yeah, we could extend the eviction moratorium for another 2 years. And then what? Everybody, like half of America is going to owe like $100,000 in back pay rent. Like, it's
I was just gonna say,
Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Yeah, it really is. And I think like the big issue for me is that it even the plan right now doesn't really fix anything. Like, it sends money to it sends it to states and then to localities, and then they have to dole out the money, and it's just so mismanaged, and it's like it's put so much pressure on, and you also now have to contend with this like arbitrary deadline. And I understand there is a cash flow issue. I just don't think, I still think at the end of the day, it's like it's kicking people out of their homes, and landlords can benefit.
Yeah. Okay. Biden bombs Somalia 3 times.
Ben?
I mean, who's surprised? I don't know. It just seems like, yeah, he got to have his little, honeymoon period of, but like this, yeah, I haven't looked into it a ton, but who's surprised? Like what?
It does.
What is there to say about it? This is just gonna keep happening over and over and over again. Forever.
I've been thinking about it a lot in my opinions about it, and clearly, to me, it's just a continuation of the Trump expanded war there, followed the Obama, that followed with the Bush, and it's clearly, I don't know if it's making things worse, but what they're doing is bombing al-Shabaab, which is reportedly connected with al-Qaeda. And the only feedback that I've seen from Democrats, and the only pushback I've seen from Democrats, and of course there's been no from Republicans, is that it was in the AUMF repeal hearing, which is the authorization to use military force. It's most notably used for al-Qaeda, but there's actually two of them. There's one in 2001, which was the one for al-Qaeda, and there's one for 2002, which allowed the Bush administration to have military operations in Iraq, and they're repealing 2002. So 2001 which gives the authorization for what Biden's doing in Somalia right now. So again, that is the most criticism that you've seen in the US press about this issue. And no matter what you think of what they're doing, I would love to have some debate about this, because I'll admit I'm a little ambiguous about it. I don't like the idea of killing people, but
yeah, I think the only thing I really heard is Ilhan Omar kind of mentioned that, like, she was asking the White House for more information on what they were doing, but nothing more forceful than that. I don't know. I think as we, we're basically going to see if I don't think Afghanistan's going to wind down, actually, but I think this is going to continue to wind up in the coming years.
Biden's town hall.
Oh God.
I regrettably have not done any research on this one, so Ben, you can just riff on it for 10 minutes.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it's exactly what you think it's going to be, and I think I've said this before: is we need to just get the fuck rid of town halls, especially in the Biden years. I mean, town halls are a absolute waste of everybody's time. They're totally curated and fake, and especially Biden getting basically like caught, like carried over the finish line by Don Lemon, and like it's funny. I was reading an article about it. It was like 5 takeaways from the Biden's town hall, which was like a CNN article, and I didn't watch the entire thing, but I watched clips of it and stuff, and it was like, one takeaway: Biden is bad at this and like cannot form sentences. I mean, and it's like, I don't even like watching this stuff anymore, especially since we've known that he's had a fucking pickled brain since during the election, but it's so much clearer now. And it's like, and it's really like Don Lemon was like giving him the benefit of every doubt, and like there's so many times where he was just like alphabet souping his answers, and it was incomprehensible, and Don Lemon would just be there and like nod and feed him more questions as if what he just said made sense. And we're gonna have to grapple with that at some point, but we're definitely in his brain is pickled. He is so fucking senile, and it's so like, and everyone, I'm so sick of this, like, it's a stutter. It's not a stutter. That's not what stutters are. Like, so yeah, they just need to get rid of these. It was a total hack job, and everybody involved should be ashamed of themselves.
Oh, and then this one I added, I don't know if you guys saw it, but what did you think about the UN's Code Red climate crisis?
Oh God.
Yeah, I saw that you added this one in, and I really get to see it from like a high level view, but the most interesting thing to me is that they've been able to track the history of climate change a lot more. And again, I haven't really read the article. I've just read like very limited headlines about it, but they were able to track it back, of course, to like the Industrial Revolution and how that has affected climate. So quite the amount of time there. And then the next headline that I was getting to was how climate science is becoming more precise. But really the big thing for me about this stuff is I kind of tune out with climate news. I'm completely supportive of anything and everything that we can do to make it better. But yeah, kind of my opinion about it. admittedly kind of find it hard to be interested in.
It's just, I mean, it's just miserable. And this one was like no different, but worse. It was just like, oh yeah, like, yeah, clock is ticking, and like not in 100 years, in like 20. It's gonna be, it's fucking terrifying. And it's so goddamn depressing. Like it always is, which is, I think, is why a lot of people tune out from that. But one thing I do like about stuff like this, and like contextualizing it within the Industrial Revolution, in that kind of timeline. I haven't read the whole report either, but it drives me insane when climate issues are sort of personalized. Like I know that we should all do our part here and there, you know, like not having so much plastic or stuff like that, or like people will be like eating less red meat, not having factory farm meat, stuff like that. That's all well and good, but like like me recycling is not what's going to shift things, or everybody recycling, everybody becoming vegan right now will not do anything. So we need to like, yeah, this actually needs to be something that happens on a massive scale, and it's sad. Yeah, so we kind of let this section go by the wayside, but I'd like to get back into it more often. And I think, as we know, our section "You're Hurting Our Feelings" is just kind of taking bits of news stories that may or may not be substantive, often are, but really how they're digested, how they're presented, is really more about just how it affects people on a personal level, rather than really being about any sort of policy or cultural significance. And I thought a great one that everybody's fucking talking about the last week or so is I would love to get into Barack Obama's big 6-0 birthday bash, because there was a lot of feels being thrown around on this from both sides. There's a lot of smoke about it, so I thought we should just let's get into it. I don't think it's an interesting story, actually. I mean, it's funny, but I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it's one of the situations we talked about this with Simone Biles. You know, obviously everybody cashes in, and everybody has a hot take about it, and clearly, like, everybody is either hated or loved because of their hot take, and it's such a movable group in that way too. You know, it's like if you talk shit about Obama, like having the 60th birthday party, you're hated by some and loved by others. You know, it's just a lame story. I will say it's very indicative of who Obama is.
I think that's the most, you know, it's more of like, it's the most telling thing about it is the character story of who Barack Obama, kind of who he has become, but more, I think, who he has always been. But we're only now, you know, in his later post-presidency years, getting to see, I think, the man that he always was, which was someone who, in very similar terms to Donald Trump, wanted to be a celebrity president. He wants to be adored by all, wants to be rubbing elbows with the rich and beautiful and popular figures in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And not really participate in anything that's politically substantive, unless it's, you know, getting the NBA to stop protesting Black Lives Matter, or of course he'll always be happy to come out of the woodwork if he can kneecap a Bernie Sanders campaign. But this is really who he is. He wants to be you know, hanging out with Jay-Z and Don Cheadle and Richard Branson and be having lavish parties and be celebrated for it. And I think that's the thing that came from this. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, though, because like the big thing that kind of kicked this all off was the perceived hypocrisy about the fact that a lot of people on the left, and especially in the mainstream media and elite leftist circles, are, you know, still really holding on to mask mandates, wanting to hold on to lockdowns. And really, I think we've talked about it before, but I think that's a lot less out of a interest in, or I think it's become less about an interest in public health and more an interest in being able to have like cultural or like currency with which to shame people, to hold it over people's head. I'm a more responsible citizen than you. And rightfully so, he's having this big, 400 people or whatever birthday party at Martha's Vineyard. So like there was that. They point out the hypocrisy of this. And I don't know about you, but first of all, all those people are probably double vaxxed. I think if you're double vaxxed, you should absolutely be able to have a function like this. I don't have any problem with him having a big birthday party. That's people's prerogative, and that's okay. I think the hypocrisy is not the most interesting thing about it, but I do kind of get where it comes from the criticism from the right.
I did want to point out, in contrast to Biden, who so far has only gone to Delaware. And
like every fucking weekend. Like
we're making fun of his age, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean he spent less time in the White House than Trump had at this time.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting, like, again, in contrast, like, because I know Bill Clinton was a big staple on Martha's Vineyard, and of course he had that whole celebrity appeal as well, and Obama does it too, and Trump clearly chose his own resort because, of course, and I wonder what
he likes being surrounded by gold shit, That's where he's comfortable.
Yeah, no, again, it reveals a lot about who Obama is, and clearly it's this celebrity president who like you said, wants to be substantive on issues that will probably make you upset upon examination.
Yeah, and well, I think it's worth pointing out for those of you who don't know that this guest list, in response to this, like a day before the party or whatever, in response to the criticism, the backlash that they were getting, they did decide to scale down the party guest list by about half. And wouldn't you know, all of the former Obama staffers, like people like David Axelrod and like others who had been with him from the beginning, like since he was a senator, and were really like instrumental in his rise to power and were with him every bit of the way, all those fucks got axed. And instead it's like Don Cheadle and Jay-Z and Erykah Badu and like Eddie Vedder. We did think there was whispers that Pearl Jam would be headlining it. It turns out that was not true, but Eddie Vedder was in attendance.
Wait, were they going to have a headliner?
I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe it was just sacrificing a child. Favor that. But yeah, so that's first. Again, Kyle Kulinski said he was like described him like a Great Gatsby type character. I think he's kind of closer to like a Patrick Bateman character, but it's just it's just like
still.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like and like I don't have any sympathy for Axelrod or any of those fucks who got, probably all the guys from Pod Save America didn't get to go. Like I have no sympathy for them. Like, oh no, you're the drone president and invite you to his stupid ass party. But like, it is fucking funny. It is really funny. It's total Mean Girls shit of like, there's no room at the table anymore. And we're gonna,
It is kind of hilarious that it happened so near this Cuomo debacle, because really, I mean, these moments defined how people feel about politics. In my opinion, like, because I think, obviously people are starting to think about the midterms, if not 2024. So, hey, hypocrisy never looks good. In fact, it looks really bad in politics.
Yeah, but I think going back to your point, I guess this is comparing it to Simone Biles, I guess, is the crux of this, of like, I think the most interesting thing about it, if anything is interesting about it, other than it sounded like a lame fucking party, apparently they had a vegetarian menu provided by Questlove. I heard that somewhere.
Yeah,
I didn't know
he was. But you have to cook everything.
he was on the catering team. He actually wasn't invited guest. I love Questlove. I love the Roots. But yeah, they had baseball caps that said 44 at 60, which is cool, bro. Super cool. But yeah, sorry, going back to what you said about Simone Biles and like this, I think this is just a total issue of confirmation bias, right? You're gonna, if you already loved Obama, you're not gonna care, and you're gonna make every excuse for him in the world and be like, oh well, yeah, he's a boss. Of course, I'd party with Jay-Z rather than
Wear a mask.
yeah. But and then if you hate Obama, you're gonna hate him more. Yeah, the hypocrisy thing was like the least interesting thing about this whole thing to me. It was just like this kind of fucking absolute sociopath just living his best life, folks.
Do you think Biden got invited?
No.
Like purposely, right?
No, I mean, no, I don't think he was invited. I don't know why, but I feel like Joe would probably be fun at a party, actually. It'd be the be sitting in the corner eating soup, telling you about a colored fellow he met back in like 50 years ago who used to sell gum.
Do you think Joe Biden could be kind of fun?
I think I've said this before, but I'd love to have him as like my neighbor.
Yeah. Nobody asked for. Probably nobody asked for this. Is Matt Gaetz' insistence on bringing the conversation back to Britney Spears
again?
I don't know. I saw it like a week or two ago, and yeah, it's such a weird. It's such an odd play.
Didn't he offer her like legal representation?
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, no, I don't remember hearing this. Bless him for trying to stay in the public eye, which is definitely not in his best interest.
What a good Samaritan, you know. Okay.
Let it go, man.
Ben, do you want to explain what gut reactions are?
Well, we just find something that we found interesting, found funny, found compelling, and I will pick one, Dan will pick one, Joe will find one, and we just kind of present it to the other one unprompted. And you get our raw gut reaction to it, unfiltered, unfettered opinion, basically.
I showed a gut reaction with you.
All right.
This is just a soft one to kick it off.
Okay. So this is from Mediaite by Ken Meyer, July 7th, 2021. Accused rioter has his U.S. Capitol Lego set seized by FBI as evidence. And I'll read the first bit of this. It's been about 6 months since the U.S. Capitol was besieged by Donald Trump supporters hoping to violently overturn his 2020 election defeat. While the former president is moving to legally battle the tech companies that banished him from social media in connection to those events, the Justice Department continues to bring charges against the rioters while seeking out participants who've yet to be identified and indicted. In the meantime, the FBI has indicted a Pennsylvania man who supposedly played a leadership role during the attempted insurrection, and judging by the evidence they seized from his home, they're literally building a case against him brick by brick. Real nice, Ken. Okay. The Smoking Gun has a report out on accused rioter Robert Morse and the violent actions he allegedly committed against police officers as he and others breached the Capitol's Lower West Terrace. According to the court documents obtained by the outlet, the FBI seized evidence from Morse's home after placing him under arrest, and one of the most curious items they confiscated was a fully constructed U.S. Capitol Lego set. Yeah. I mean, this is not like a news story. I mean, this is funny. And it's just really, I mean, it's really emblematic of like what this whole thing has devolved into. I think we should do like a longer recap discussion of what's going on with the January 6th stuff, even though I really want it to be over. I think there is substantive stuff to talk about, mostly in the fact that like half of them were fucking FBI informants and that sort of thing. I'm interested in talking about that, but talking about these people, it's like, yeah, like I think we said this in the first episode, they were clearly like unorganized, very dumb, sad people. And like, But if he was planning out his route through the Capitol via Legos, then I think that's proving my point about as well as you possibly could, right? Like it shows you how dumb the investigation is and how dumb that guy was. Like, is there anything else to say about it? Like, how put yourself in the shoes of an FBI agent, like what, like putting it in a, like putting like the little like ticket on it for evidence, like take this in. Did they want to kill themselves in that moment of like, oh my God, how, what, all those years at Quantico for this shit, what is my fucking life? Confiscating Lego sets, oh my God, let it go. I don't know. It's like when there was a story a while back or years back that was like some guy broke into the White House, and like they found in his car like a map of DC and like a fucking Sharpie marker had circled the White House, and it was like, yeah, this is the level of master criminal that you're dealing with.
This kind of revives the conversation we had with the Haiti assassins.
Yeah.
The worst men for the job.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's like it should like this stuff should give, people get mad at me too for like kind of underplaying the severity of January 6th, and I stand by it. I don't think it was, I mean, it was serious in certain results or certain ways, and it's terrible that it happened, but it wasn't fucking 9/11. It just wasn't, and it's never going to be. And we can try it as much as we want, but, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all those Saudi hijackers had a fucking Lego World Trade Center up in their in their loft apartment, and they had like, and then like a paper airplane, or like, okay, we're going, and then we go here, and then we hit it. Yeah.
Yeah, they throw it.
That's how everybody trains. That's how everybody trains. It's just like, yeah, it was like this guy watched fucking Ocean's 11 and was like, where do they get those dioramas? We can't afford them.
All right, what's yours?
I've been holding on to this one for a little bit. This is some news out of England that came out a couple weeks ago.
All right, this is from Indy 100, which is part of the Independent publication. Should note the way the ads look on this thing make it seem as if like it's the Sun newspaper or something.
No, it's just this article was all over the British press. That's just the first one that came up. There was a Guardian article about it.
Jeez. Okay, so this is by Kate Plummer, who on Thursday, 15th of July, 2021, had the privilege to write the byline, or read the headline. Actor in monkey costume with fake penis and bare bum was invited to library to encourage children to read. Scroll down and you get a photo of. This is a great caption of the photo is the offending monkey.
And could you give our listeners like a little description of this vision of horror that is this costume?
Yeah, so you would think kind of Planet of the Apes, when you hear the story, it's like, oh yeah, penis is a weird addition, but bare bum, I can get it. And you think kind of like brown fur or something normal. No, this is all pastel, rainbow colored fur with a gigantic pink cock, face
very realistic, like dildo, like looks like a human penis.
Yeah.
Good 8 inches at least.
Yeah, and like the way that they've done the makeup does make it kind of appear like Planet of the Apes, but somehow much more creepy. So just I'll read a couple paragraphs. That says, where to begin, where to begin. Right. Reading is good, it's entertaining, it's education, it's relaxing. But unfortunately, some children aren't so keen on it. There are competitors out there like the TV, the outside world, friends, phones, computers, TikTok, all threatening to cause their educational performance to dip upon return to school after the summer. Huh. I don't know why they decided to make that a different sentence. And so to the summer reading challenge we turn, an educational competition that began in 1999 to encourage children to read 6 books over the course of their 6-week summer holiday, and in the process win stickers and medals based on whatever the theme is in a given year. It's supported by umbrella groups and takes place in local libraries across the country. It's all very wholesome stuff until now. Goodmay's Library in Redbridge, East London, ruined everything by inviting an actor in a rainbow monkey costume with a fake penis and bare bum to the launch event, and created an absolute shitstorm. The actor represented this year's theme, Wild World Heroes, and was joined by someone dressed as a strawberry and another dressed as a frog in a promotional video circulated on social media. Oh man. So I have to figure out, was this by choice? This was the choice costume?
Okay, so I have another thing to send to this. So I did I tried to do as deep of a dive as I could into this when I found this story. So the group in question that sent the terrifying rainbow monkey penis guy with very realistic flesh-colored nipples too, by the way.
Yeah.
So they're called Mandinga Arts or Mandinga Performing Arts or something like that.
Mhm.
Now, by the way, as a side note, the first article I read had a typo, and they said it was Mandingo Arts, and I was like, yeesh. And I was like, that library should have caught that. You should have never hired these people. But no, it's Mandinga, which is still a little uncomfortably close to Mandingo.
Yeah.
But I went around, I was like trying to find out more about them, and they put on sort of wild costumed theatrical events for children and stuff. And I'm gonna send a picture to a screenshot to the WhatsApp chat.
Okay.
So I looked up like hashtag Mandinga Arts on Instagram, and this was the first picture I found.
So they are they Dutch?
No, I think they're I don't know, but I mean they operate in the UK.
No, this is just at some like Dutch
Yeah,
Carnival.
yeah. So, and for our listeners now, there's 4 characters shown. One of them's got sort of a Maleficent kind of witch thing. Another one is like a sunshine rays. The other one's like a zebra thing or whatever. And there's another guy that shows that this is a theme, which is a rainbow giant penis. And that giant penis that comes out of the man's head is covered with smaller penises. And where that man's penis would be, there is also another very large penis that has more smaller penises coming out of it.
Oh, did you notice the penis is on the leg too?
Yeah. The penis is coming out of the legs, out of the arms, off the other penis.
One piece is on the chest too, looks like.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they have a thing for rainbow penises. But this caused quite the uproar. And yeah, I don't know what the fuck these perverts over at Mandinga Arts were thinking, but yeah, this.
I think it's time for you to come home, Ben.
This country is This country is morally bankrupt. there's no saving it.
This tweet is kind of funny. It said, and they picture the monkey, but they also have an ass shot, and the ass is. It looks like this ass trains at the gym 5 days of the week. Very fit. But yeah, the tweet says, can a word capture the spirit of an age? Images certainly can. In future, when we think back on the zeitgeist of 2021, we may remember Rainbow Dildo Butt Monkey and wonder how on earth we descended to thinking that this was suitable entertainment for children.
And to teach them to read, no less. Like, I got an idea.
Yeah, it just sounds like such a comedy skit. Like, they're walking with him and the dick hits a little kid in the face or something.
Yeah, it's something out of like Nick Kroll.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good one. Yeah.
That's all I got for gut reactions.
I'm gonna send 2 more. And these, we don't have to sit on these long, but they're just kind of funny. This one made me laugh.
Okay, this comes from IndieWire by Zach Scharf. June 14th, 2021. Kevin Hart says, "Shut the fuck up to cancel culture. I personally don't give a shit about it." Hart says it's important to give people the chance to grow, adding, "The only way you grow up is from fucking up." Kevin Hart experienced cancel culture firsthand when controversial jokes from his past resurfaced ahead of his gig hosting the 91st Academy Awards. The comedian exited the Oscars in the wake of the media blitz that surrounded his past jokes, but it took a while for Hart to issue a straightforward apology for his insensitive words. Now, in a new interview with the Sunday Times ahead of Netflix debut of his new film, Fatherhood, Hart railed against cancel culture and said it has led to a loss of freedom in comedy because many comics feel censored by thinking that things you say will come back and bite you in the ass. I mean, it's true.
No, but it's, for me, the funny part is reading it in like Kevin Hart voice.
Oh yeah,
I'm not suggesting you do that.
I'm not going to do that.
Also, that's the UK Sunday Times.
No,
which is interesting outlet.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember Kevin Hart getting canceled. Like, he totally got canceled, and I thought it was dumb. I mean, his stuff is pretty tame. He got taken down for like a vaguely homophobic joke, or a homophobic joke he told several years before. It's just like, whatever. And then I do remember seeing some people posting about this new fatherhood thing and being like, fuck him, like, how dare he talk about, it's like, I don't know, it's just people want to hate people forever. It's like, leave Kevin Hart alone. He's not that big a deal. Like, directed towards Andrew Cuomo, people in power, people who are actually doing bad shit. And it's like, oh, this person told a joke you didn't like 9 years ago. Like, who gives a shit? Don't listen to it. You don't have to.
The culture was much different back then. I don't use that as an excuse, obviously. And if people want to not listen to him, or if they want to quote unquote cancel him, unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, it's just the way the world works now.
Well, you're not going to cancel him. He's one of the biggest comedians of all time.
Yeah, I think he's weathered the storm. I don't think that it's going anywhere.
And also, he went on a huge apology tour for it. He stepped down from the Oscars and shit. Like, how much more blood do you need to take from this guy? Like, what's the pound of flesh? That's always the thing, is there's no end game to this conversation. Other than what, you want these people to disappear? There's still people complaining about Louis C.K. in that way too, of just what's enough? We just they're just you work at a gas station now forever because you said something I didn't like, especially with Kevin Hart. I mean, I don't really watch his shit. It's not my favorite stuff, but who cares? There's bigger demons to slay.
I have one more for you.
Yeah. There's another one from Mediaite by Caleb Howe, August 3rd, 2021. News from Florida. DeSantis gives Ben & Jerry's parent company 90 days to cease Israel boycott or face consequences. Ooh. What are you going to do, Ron DeSantis? Oh my God.
I really think Ron DeSantis is killing it. Ron Machiavelli DeSantis, I should say.
Yeah. Oh man. He's straight for the jugular every time, this guy. Okay, so I'll just read the first couple lines of this. We all know where this is going, but on Tuesday, Florida added Unilever, parent company of Ben & Jerry's, to their list of, quote, scrutinized companies over the ice cream giant's boycott of Israel. But scrutinized companies by Florida? That's a thing? Does every state have that? Right. Going back to reading, this means they have 90 days to cease the boycott or face being boycotted themselves by the state of Florida. Ben & Jerry's announced it was canceling the contract with its Israeli license because it will no longer do business in occupied Palestinian territory, a move that sparked a fierce backlash from the Israeli government. Florida is, this is important, Florida is one of many US states with laws regarding boycotting of Israel or Israeli citizens. Its state board of administrators maintains a list of, quote, scrutinized companies, so it is directly in the BDS stuff, okay, which is made up of, quote, companies that participate in the boycott of Israel, including actions that limit commercial relations with Israel or Israeli-controlled territories. Florida has added Unilever to that list, as they did Airbnb earlier this year. The announcement was made Tuesday following the blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, this whole thing is insane. I mean, it's absolutely part and parcel. So yeah, just going back to this, for anybody who hasn't heard about it, going back to Ben & Jerry's made a pretty, I don't know, anodyne to me, but not to some people, but they basically said they weren't going to sell their shit in occupied Palestinian territories anymore, and that was it. And characteristically, the Israeli government threw a big old hissy fit, like the big fucking thin-skinned babies that they are. And every fucking all the greatest hits. This is an anti-Semitic company, even though I'm pretty sure Ben and Jerry, who actually don't run the company anymore, but are both Jewish people.
They made the statement, but yeah,
they made the statement, but yeah. So Israel was doing what Israel does, right? And then that's not surprising. The thing that might be more surprising to people is that there are laws on the books, and quite, like at least a dozen states, maybe more, about being anti-BDS. So you may remember there was a story that came out a couple years ago from Texas of like public school workers were pressured to sign in like an agreement that they would not participate in BDS. It's so stupid and childish on one level, but this should be a really big deal to you, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, and also whatever your opinion is on Israel. It is batshit crazy that an American citizen or an American company or a state or any person in the United States of America should have to like pledge allegiance to a foreign nation. That's crazy. And that's what's so funny from like people like, the Ben Shapiro's of the world, and like, all these like fucking right-wing so-called like free speech patriots. They should be the ones who are the most up in arms about this. I mean, imagine if you were getting a new job and it's like, okay, you need to, all well and good, all this paperwork is in order, but just before we start, you need to sign this pledge that you're never going to criticize the French government. Like, what? I wouldn't do that. I mean, I have, my opinions on the state of Israel are well documented on this show, but I wouldn't do that for any country ever. Like,
not to interrupt, but I just want to say one thing that fascinates me about this, and I totally agree. It's very just strange at the most neutral way to think about this, but it's achieved in the most obnoxious of ways. It's obviously like they made this in response to the Ben and Jerry's decision, but it's like such a laughable legislation on its surface, yet it does have this political force behind it. Like, as you mentioned, there are anti-BDS movements, anti-BDS legislation in many states, right? And it's kind of the same with like the what do they call it? They call it like anti-rioting, but they really mean like anti-protesting legislation that is just as pernicious, and like it's so laughable. Yet these laws are actually getting passed.
Yeah, and they're really insidious. I mean, it is laughable, and like, but like you again, like for anybody who doesn't know about these things, like look into it and like, ask yourself, are you okay with this? Because no one should be okay with this. It is so fucking crazy that, and like for again, this is what Israel does. They throw fits. They're very thin-skinned, and they will do this every time. But that doesn't mean we should have to fucking listen to them. And like they're the definition of sore winners. They get everything they fucking want from the US government, and it's never enough. They're still not happy with it. It's like, why don't you go take your fucking billions of dollars in support and shut the fuck up and stay out of our fucking political discourse, and stay out of like, you do not get to tell us what to do. You don't get to, and you don't get to tell a private American company, especially if you're like pro-capitalist. This should infuriate you that like your company isn't allowed to make its own fucking decisions on where it's going to sell its product because some foreign government wants to have a little bitch fit about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, again, like these people who pretend to be like the Ben Shapiro's of the world really do pretend to be rigid about their ideology. Yet when it comes to this
Then
decision
this
or
is a
something
bridge
else,
too far. Like,
right, yeah, exactly. So
companies have this, but I think Ben Shapiro did have a tweet like that. He was like, Ben and Jerry's has gone too far. And I was like, oh, fuck off. Like you have no spine. You have no actual moral character on fucking anything. HuffPost update. This just came out like just a minute ago, didn't it?
Wow.
Britney Spears' father intends to step down as conservator reports.
This is breaking news.
An attorney from the pop star said that Jamie Spears should step aside immediately. Singer Britney Spears' father intends to transition away from acting as her conservator, marking a major potential victory for the pop star as she seeks to dissolve that. Yeah, that's great.
Wait. I just want to say that Cuomo, his resignation is actually 14 days away. And I'm wondering, this is like such a Cuomo move to transition. You know, his resignation isn't immediate. Wow.
Yeah. That's good. It's very good. We'll see what this means for if this can and also fuck him. Does he not have, he can he can lay in his piles of ill-gotten cash for the rest of his life. He's set up. So yeah, fuck off, Jamie Spears. We don't need you.
Thank you all for hanging with us, sitting with us through season 1. We are really excited to show you what we have up our sleeves for season 2. So it's Kevin Gosztola this week, and next week, who knows? We'll see.
Stay tuned.
Hey there.
Oh,
Kevin, hey, welcome back.
Hello. I was just fumbling with it.
Totally.
Aren't we all?
Kevin, thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining us again. I know today's been super busy, so we're super excited to talk to you. Again, my name is Dan.
Ben, this is our producer, Joe.
I know we're kind of in a time crunch today, so I just want to kind of get some rapid fire questions over to you about the Assange case as well as Hale. So we'll just do like a quick introduction and then we can dive in.
That sounds good. All right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of Villain for All Seasons. I'm Dan.
I'm Ben.
And we are speaking with our first repeat guest, Kevin Gosztola. Kevin recently just covered the Assange hearing that happened today, and we are really excited to talk to him about that and Daniel Hale. But without further ado, Kevin, could you just give us an update on what actually happened today with the Assange hearing?
Yeah. So thanks for welcoming me back. The hearing this morning was about 2 hours long, and essentially the U.S. government was telling the High Court that they were wrong. This British High Court of Justice, it's an appeals court. This is appeal in the extradition case against Julian Assange, and they were telling the High Court of Justice that it was wrong for them to not allow them to appeal on 2 specific grounds. And one ground was that they believe that the credibility of this neuropsychiatrist named Michael Kopelman was that he gave unreliable testimony because he is documented misleading the court. And that's according to the way the judge ruled. That's not my opinion. I'm just taking a word that the judge used, where she said that he misled the court by not revealing the relationship that Julian Assange had with Stella Morris, who was working with the legal team, and that he had fathered 2 children within the Ecuador embassy. So that was one issue. And then the other one was the risk of suicide. And she was, when she made her ruling, she relied upon this professor, this neuropsychiatrist's evidence, along with another doctor's evidence related to Julian Assange being diagnosed with autism. And so this was all important to calculating that if he was extradited, it would be oppressive for health reasons to send him to the United States. And on these two grounds, the High Court initially said they could not have an appeal. They could have an appeal on 3 other grounds, but these two, because they involve facts, what I'm talking about are conclusions of fact. It's not a legal debate. So for us to talk about this, we would be challenging doctors whose expertise is usually incontrovertible. We can't really say to them, because we're not in any position, the judge is not in any position to say to these doctors, like, you don't know that Julian Assange is suffering from these mental health disorders. So typically an appeals court wouldn't question this, but they've got the appeals court to allow the US government to find a way to argue that this doctor wasn't a credible witness.
Or
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
I want to talk about the Kopelman situation and how that really relates. What do they mean? Kopelman misled the court in regards to the Stella Morris and fathering 2 children. I guess I'm confused. How does that apply to the case?
It shouldn't, because the judge actually, in her ruling, addressed this issue and said she was upset that he didn't fulfill his duty or obligation as an expert witness. He signed something in December 2019 that said anything that could have an adverse impact on his evidence should be brought before the court. If he had concerns about the disclosure of any details, he could apply to the district court and he could say that I think this information should be kept private. Now, obviously, there are things we understand about the nature in which lawfare has occurred in the Julian Assange case and the way it can occur in other cases. So you could imagine the defense team talking with Michael Kopelman and saying, I don't know, if it's even good to petition the court and tell the court that we are wanting to keep this private. Because what if they go against us and they're going to force us to disclose this before we're ready to reveal to the world that Stella Morris is a partner of Julian Assange and that they fathered 2 children in the Ecuador embassy. And this isn't an abstract kind of like TMZ sort of issue. The fact is, there was a surveillance company named UC Global that conducted an espionage operation against the Ecuador embassy. And they did wild things like tried to get a hold of a diaper so that they could do DNA testing and figure out if the baby was Julian Assange's, or they wanted to pursue the possibility, at least David Morales, the director, considered the possibility of poisoning and kidnapping Julian Assange. They were heavily interested in Stella Morris. There have been threats that have been issued against him. When his home was raided by the police, because there's a criminal case unfolding in Spain against David Morales, they found 2 weapons with the serial numbers erased, and he had no ownership licenses for those weapons, which raises the concern and threat level of him and anyone around him. And Julian Assange at this time, in December 2019, was already, I believe, in some way or another, challenging what had happened with the UC Global company against him while he was in the embassy. So that just raises the reasoning for keeping it private, that there's a relationship ongoing with Stella Morris. It's believed that the US government, through some intelligence agency, had contracted out or was aware of the contract or was some way supporting a contract with UC Global for spying on the Ecuador embassy. So there's no trust in revealing this relationship through the court or allowing the US government to find out that there's a relationship with Stella Morris and that he has 2 children. They don't want it to become something they can use as leverage against Julian Assange in the extradition case either. Nonetheless, he could have made this request to the court to keep it private. And so let's accept that he did mislead the court. It doesn't matter. Like, what you're trying to figure out is, how does that have any effect on his expert evidence on Julian Assange's mental health condition? So he misled the court, and this is the thing the defense says. And also the judge said, there's a very human reason why he didn't want to tell the court. And she recognized that. Like Judge Vanessa Baretzer, who entertained a lot of the other arguments and didn't accept that Julian Assange was a journalist, still in her ruling said, understand the human reason for not wanting to tell this court about Stella and the kids so that you could protect them. And so anyways, she writes out in her ruling all of the evidence from Kopelman related to Julian Assange's psychiatric state, and says that basically this is all thorough. This is the doctor who was treating and seeing Julian Assange from May 2019 to December 2019 and knows best and better than any of the other doctors whether he's at risk of suicide or not. He saw the way that he was after he was expelled from the embassy in April. He saw how he got better as he was able to have visits, as there was some treatment that went on at Belmarsh prison. And then he saw how he deteriorated again at the end of 2019. So he's able to map out and see what this long time frame is like for Assange, which is the same kind of time that we would see play out in a US jail or at a US prison. And there's moments of uncertainty and not knowing what's going to happen next with his family or his case. And that's the kind of thing that is important for this doctor to assess. And so the conclusion by Vanessa Baretzer said it doesn't matter. He misled. I don't forgive him for that. I think that that's a bad mark on him, but it has no bearing on what he's saying, which is important to me and why I'm going to reject this extradition request and make this conclusion that it would be oppressive to extradite him to the United States.
That was a great explanation of that, and I love the TMZ call out there. The U.S. did win the appeal today, right? And can you talk a little bit about that, as well as give a little bit of an overview of the suicide element that you mentioned earlier as well?
Yeah, so I'll just be a little persnickety because there's a resistance grifter out there named Eric Garland who was really excited that it looked like the U.S. had just won its appeal. And I suppose he wanted his followers to think Assange was going to be extradited to the United States any moment. But it was just basically that they can argue it. So the U.S., we could sit here for an hour and debate whether they're in a better position or not to be able to argue it before the high court. On one hand, you could say the high court of justice is just like, yeah, whatever, argue it before us. Ultimately, we could see ourselves rejecting it, but we'll just let you do whatever you want. The United States government, we normally let you do anything anyways. So just come argue it. That doesn't mean we're going to say that it's a fair reason for Julian Assange to be extradited to the United States. So on the matter of the risk of suicide, and yes, they won. So technically speaking, the appeal expanded. All the arguments that they want to make before the High Court of Justice are going to be heard. And that hearing will take place at the end of October, on October 27th and 28th. It'll be a 2-day hearing. And I'm glad that it's not going to be 4 days, because that'll matter how much the defense and the prosecutors wanted to argue that they needed 4 days for this. I don't think I can get up at 3:30 a.m. for 4 straight days. Already did 1 month back in September. And I'm also tired of our time being wasted, because this case is like, there's really not much to it. Like, honestly, a lot of these arguments that we're having, they're very frivolous. There's nothing to it. They have nothing to do with the core issue of press freedom, in which Julian Assange is the case is a threat to press freedom. And we sit here having these discussions in court that have nothing to do with the larger issue of what's happened to Julian Assange and his family. And so the risk of suicide issue is basically that they want to contest this evidence, go back over it, and they're complaining that Judge Vanessa Baretzer was more into evidence from two doctors that the defense preferred, but didn't really like the doctors that the prosecutors put forward. And so it's, basically them saying that we want the High Court of Justice to consider our facts and to ignore the defense's facts.
Interesting. What happens next? I mean, I know that you mentioned that they do have this hearing coming up at the end of October. What do you expect? What's your prediction?
Well, all along, I've expected that the United States government would have a major uphill battle, but what we have taking place in October will be the argument over whether the judge should have asked them for assurances. I put assurances in quotes for anyone who's just listening and not watching video, because the U.S. government believes that it was Judge Vanessa Baretzer's responsibility or obligation to come to them and say, I don't think his human rights would be respected. I want you to tell me if there's anything you could do to alleviate that concern. And then, having alerted them, they would have said, this is what they claim in their appeal. We would have told the court, we would have told the judge that we will not put him in special administrative measures, this really intense way of placing a person accused of national security offenses in confinement while they're waiting for trial, and potentially later after their conviction, when that restricts you to like maybe 1 or 2 phone calls a month, you get to screen, do more extensive screenings of their mail. It disrupts your communications with your lawyers. It's harder for you to work on your defense. They usually would do this if they're afraid of leaks, or they're afraid of how he would use his ability to communicate, and if they saw him as some kind of threat. And so they'll say, well, we won't put him in SAMS. But, if he gets here and he does something and we need to put him in SAMS, we could put him in SAMS. And then the other thing was that they'll allow the Australia government to take him, and he could go to Australia and serve his prison sentence if he's convicted in the United States, because there's a treaty that the US has with Australia that would allow him, since Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. So, but I mean, just think of the absurdity of that for one moment, because essentially the US government is telling the High Court now that they can't take a person and hold them in jail or prison without violating their human rights. And so they're going to dump him off to Australia, and Australia will do a better job of taking care of him. So don't worry, you won't have to worry about us taking him, and he won't be at risk of committing suicide. We won't drive him mad and crazy because he's going to go to Australia, which is going to be closer to where he was born. It's ludicrous to accept that as a way of getting around the core problem that led Judge Baretzer to reject the extradition in the first place. But this is what they're trying, and I honestly don't know what the High Court of Justice's response will be, other than to reflect on a past case involving a hacker named Lori Love, which I only know a few details about, but the basic essence that is relevant to Julian Assange's case is that Lori was accused of doing something that involved a violation of Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, or he's treated almost the same way that Julian Assange is being treated right now, and he had his own mental health conditions. I think he had some kind of autism or Asperger's, and it was put forward that if he was in general population in the US, that it would be inhumane for him and he would not be able to survive. And so for that reason, they denied the extradition, the High Court of Justice did. And so they're using that. And actually, there's a really interesting thread here, because Edward Fitzgerald is a defense attorney for Julian Assange. He represented Lori Love, and now he is representing Julian Assange in this case. So he knows what he's doing. And he reminds the High Court of Justice that you're supposed to consider the Lori Love approach when you are determining the outcome of these extradition cases and whether to grant it or not. And so I think, well, nobody wants to focus on Assange as like somebody who is going to have a mental breakdown if he goes to the United States, and people want to talk about him as a publisher and defend him for the work that he's done in releasing documents of great importance and exposing war crimes. But this is the way that you are likely to prevail and prevent him from getting into the clutches of the US government. This is the way that ultimately he could be saved from being in their custody and put on trial, because the Lori Love case, and there's another case before involving a hacker named Gary McKinnon, the early 2000s, and he was accused of, I believe he was accused of hacking the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency or something like that. But these both are people who had mental health problems, and ultimately the UK did not authorize their extradition. So they were never put on trial in the United States.
I want to let Ben get in with some questions if you have any, Ben.
No, I wasn't ready actually. That threw me for a loop. I didn't know about the Lori Love or the Gary McKinnon things.
Yeah, no, those are both really interesting cases, and I think should give people who are Assange supporters some hope that the High Court of Justice will be very particular with the US government as they try to wiggle their way around and say that the judge made an error when she ruled.
Well, yeah, I guess my question would, because I'm like, I don't know, it's such a, I guess I wonder, like, and you've already kind of fielded this, so I apologize, but like, what's your feeling of like that we've come to this, that we're talking about these sort of, we've come so far away from what this original case was that, like, I think to somebody coming in and reading, like, if you read a piece in The Guardian or The Nation or whatever today about the Assange ruling, it almost like has no bearing to why he's there in the first place. And I wondered if you have any thoughts on that. It's like what you're talking about with these cases. Like, I see the, like, I don't know, I guess the legalese of it, but it's kind of dizzying to think about, like, how did we get from, like, this is like a clear-cut thing of press freedom to a kind of seemingly spurious mental health issue with hackers from.
We're very deep. We're very deep into the punishment by process, right? Yeah. Like, this is how long can we drag this out? And if my opinion is that the Biden administration is actually comfortable with losing the case, but they would like it to go all the way to the Supreme Court, because if they can get it to the UK Supreme Court, which is the next level higher from the High Court of Justice and the last stage that they could actually take any appeal, and if they lost in the Supreme Court, they just have to accept that Julian Assange is never going to be on US soil for them to put on trial. But what they would like to do is continue to drag this out and keep him in legal limbo. And if they can't have a trial and they can't put him in a US prison, then the next best thing is seeing how long they can make this go in the UK. And they're succeeding. And it's wearing on Julian Assange. What you're saying is really important, because, well, let me get back to the fact that there's a cross appeal that they plan to attempt. But we actually heard Julian Assange talk after the hearing, and I shared this in my coverage on Twitter and in the live report that I put together. But the High Court of Justice didn't do anything to protect the conversation, and all of these reporters were still on this video link. And Edward Fitzgerald told Julian Assange, you know, I brought you back. I wanted to talk to you. And he was in Belmarsh prison. He didn't come to court, to the Royal Courts of Justice. He stayed at Belmarsh prison. So he was joining by a video feed, just like me. We were on the same system. as the press. So the press is there, and then you see Julian Assange tuning in to watch court. And by the way, just for people who want to know about his state and well-being, he had these big glasses on, and he as well as a very shiny white hair, and he had a black face mask because it was still protecting from pandemic in the prison, and he had a black necktie that was draped around his neck, but it wasn't tied. He had a white dress shirt. So he was dressed up like he was going to court, but obviously, like, he's not really going to be at court. So it really doesn't matter if he ties his necktie or not. And so he's there. He's brought back by the Belmarsh authorities, let's say the guards, and he is talking to Edward Fitzgerald, and Edward Fitzgerald informs him that this isn't private. You might want to wait until we have a phone call and we can talk about what happened today. And he said, I don't understand. I just don't understand. An expert witness has an obligation to protect people from harm. My children, like he says, my children, you know, my family. And then he starts talking about the sawed off, he says a sawed off gun. He's referring to like the weapons that were found in David Morales's home. And it's baffling to him that this High Court of Justice is allowing the US to discredit this psychiatrist on the basis that he wanted to protect Julian and Stella and the children from any possible harm from people who have made threats against Assange and his family. So he was processing this, and Fitzgerald explained to him that this isn't the end of the line. We haven't lost. Everything is still just arguable. And it's like I said earlier in this discussion, you know, the High Court is just allowing arguments. It could reject every single one of them, but they're being thorough and they're going to let the US say whatever they want to say. And so yes, it does feel like it's gotten far away. And I think that's kind of the frustration of Julian Assange, is that as he sits here and watches these proceedings, it's a whole discussion way down in the weeds about things that don't really have anything to do with why the US government targeted him in the first place. And that's because he published documents that they wanted to keep secret. And they embarrassed the United States. They exposed war crimes. There was evidence of torture. They involved, it related to the US drone program, and we could go on and on. And so there's a cross appeal that is actually planned, but they have to wait for the US appeal to run its course in the High Court, and then they'll go before the High Court of Justice, depending on that outcome, or maybe regardless. And they'll say to the High Court of Justice that they want to challenge the way that Judge Vanessa Baretzer handled the issues involving whether what Julian did was journalistic activity or not. You know, she rejected. She said that what he did was conduct outside of what journalists would do. So they think that's wrong, and that in the future it will be bad for journalists to have that precedent in a district court, and they want to challenge it. So that's good. We just have to wait and get through the U.S. appeal, because unfortunately I think it's fortunate, because if it was that he was losing, then now would be the natural time to say all the things about jeopardizing press freedom. But because he's on the winning end, he has to wait his turn, and the US is continuing to lose, and then see what happens. And then, you know, he's on the winning side, but he can object and do a cross appeal. It's really complicated. I know that people are kind of dizzy by it, but it's a good thing that Julian Assange and his legal team ultimately want to come back and challenge the judge's ruling, even if he is set free from Belmarsh and all of this goes away.
Kevin, I want to be respectful of your time, but I definitely want to ask you about Daniel Hale.
Yeah, I can keep going.
Okay, great. If you could just give us an overview of the Daniel Hale case. I'm also curious if you could tie in what the prosecutors wanted from the case and what they ended up getting with the verdict.
What the prosecutors did what?
The sentence that the prosecutors wanted.
Yeah.
Getting.
So the U.S. government wanted Daniel Hale, this drone whistleblower, to go to prison for 9 years. It would have been the harshest sentence ever issued for someone accused of an unauthorized disclosure of information under the Espionage Act. Right now, the record holder is Reality Winner, NSA whistleblower, who received 63 months in prison and is now out on home confinement. She was the first major Espionage Act case under President Donald Trump. So Daniel Hale, for people who do not know, is someone who was in the Air Force. He was part of Joint Special Operations Command. He was a signals intelligence analyst. He was involved in helping with the geolocation of targets who were put on lists and designated for drone strikes. And so he was in Afghanistan during the early 2000s, about 2012. And ultimately, he was honorably discharged. He came back home, had significant objections to what he was asked to do and the role that he played. Clearly, it caused post-traumatic stress disorder within him, and he wrestled with what the right thing was for him to do next. He joined Iraq Veterans Against the War. He spoke at Code Pink Summit, Code Pink being the well-known peace group in Washington, D.C. And there he was able to address relatives of people who were killed in a drone strike in Yemen, and others who were in attendance that were flown there for the drone summit. He participated in a documentary called National Bird, and he was seen with Jeremy Scahill, who at the time was doing some of the most well-known work on the drone program, particularly, well, he did the CIA and the military drone program through his Dirty Wars project. And so Daniel Hale was, associating himself with people who challenge drone warfare. And then he needed money and wanted to go to college, and he recognized he still had a security clearance. So he went to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency to work for a contractor. He signed up through this contractor named Leidos, and there he had a job. And this is a rather mundane mapping job. I think it's questionable as to whether there's even any role for them to play in our government anymore. As he would tell you, he found out that most of the time they were mapping things that you could already find on Google Maps, and maps that Google had would be even better than this agency. He didn't know he was going to have access to this highly classified information involving the US drone program, but he did. And so at one point while he was there, he tells a story in his letter to the court of being invited to stay after work with some people he was befriending or getting to know as colleagues in the office. They said, "Why don't you stay after? We're going to watch this archived footage of drone strikes." And that was something that was deeply troubling. In my mind, it probably took him back to being deployed in Afghanistan and knowing that he didn't want to be a part of that anymore, and was not somebody who wanted to sit there and revel in the assassinations of people, knowing that those people who are being killed are many, many times civilians and not even the militants who are supposedly being targeted. And so he says that's the point where I decided I was going to reach out to Jeremy Scahill and provide the documents that he did. Those became part of the drone papers. It was a really good project. It came out 7 or 8 years ago at this point.
2015, I think.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years ago. But also at that time, he had already, I believe he had already been interviewed for this documentary, National Bird, and that looked at drone whistleblowers. I'm actually going to, for anyone who wants further listening or entertainment, I'm going to interview the director of that film, Sonia Kennebec, and post it to the Shadowproof YouTube. So, but in
We'll
any
plug it.
case, well, yeah. So, and she's been doing some fantastic work on whistleblower documentaries and national security whistleblowers. So, fast forward to 2019. There's no indict. So, okay, I'll excuse me. I'll backtrack. I'm a little discombobulated. So, in 2014, he is raided. His home is raided. He's actually raided around the same time that he has his last day at the job with Litos. But the Obama administration doesn't prosecute. And in fact, the defense was able to find a document that said that the superiors in the Justice Department were not willing to back charges against him. And I don't know. I'm not sure why, but maybe it was because Barack Obama had these derogatory nicknames and was thinking about his legacy. I mean, we've called him President Kill List, called him Drone Warrior in Chief, and maybe this was just the image he didn't really want to project. And he made that really awful joke about the Jonas Brothers and sending a Predator drone to kill them if they, crossed some line with his daughters. So maybe he was thinking about his image, and that's why the Justice Department didn't go forward with the case. I don't know. And so come 2019, however, just like the Julian Assange case, and almost about the same time that they go forward with the Espionage Act case against Julian Assange, they dust off this case and they go forward with the indictment against Daniel Hale in May 2019. And that's under Donald Trump. And so now you've got, as we've talked about with Assange, you've got people at the Justice Department who do not see any problem with crossing boundaries to go after leakers, and they do not care about the collateral damage that'll be done to journalism. In fact, I think they enjoy it. It's appreciated that they are going to disrupt reporters and go after their confidential sources. And they want this to be a side effect of what they do. So Daniel Hale is allowed to not be in confinement. I think that's an important factor to mention, that he was not in jail before, because Reality Winner was kept in jail before her trial. So he's allowed to be out on bail. The pandemic hits, his trial is delayed, and then he pleads guilty. And after he pleads guilty, his therapist rats him out to the pretrial services or the court and says that he believes Daniel Hale would do harm to himself. So they need to put him in a detention center and keep him in jail until his sentencing date in July. And then on July, he was sentenced to 45 months in prison. It's much, much less than what the US government wanted. They tried all kinds of character attacks, but ultimately Daniel Hale was able to give a very eloquent 17-minute statement before the judge. He persuaded the judge. His name is Liam O'Grady in the Eastern District of Virginia. Again, a lot of this is all connected. This Eastern District of Virginia, it's the same district court that Julian Assange would be brought before if he was put on trial. The same jail that Daniel Hale's held in is Alexandria Detention Center, the same jail that Julian Assange would be held in before trial if he was brought to the United States, the same jail where Chelsea Manning, the source of the WikiLeaks documents, attempted suicide when she was subpoenaed to testify before the WikiLeaks grand jury and asked to give information that could be used against Assange for this prosecution. So he gives this speech. He persuades the judge even more that he's a person of conscience. He upsets the U.S. prosecutors even more. One of them is Gordon Kromberg. Gordon Kromberg is a notorious prosecutor whose fingerprints are all over the Assange case. His fingerprints are all over the Daniel Hale case, and he was in court on sentencing date and behind these character attacks, and furious that the press was devouring coverage that called Daniel Hale a whistleblower, because that's not how they want us to view Daniel Hale. And Daniel Hale got a sentence of 45 months. He's likely to do only 18 months in prison. So that's excellent for him. 18 months too many, 45 months too many. But because of the fact that he's got time served and he's going to get good behavior credit, and he's enrolled in a drug abuse program, which, as CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou can tell you from his experience, you basically go into a room, they show you episodes of Interventions. It's a show that's been on for like years and years and years. And this is their substance abuse education program. And after it's over, you get to take a year off your sentence and get out of prison earlier. So of course you want your lawyer or you want the Bureau of Prisons to enroll you in the RDAP program. And that's what Daniel Hale is going to get to do. I think he's in a medical facility in North Carolina. So it's not that much better than being in a standard facility, but there are people there that already are aware that you have health conditions that you brought with you to prison. So after 18 months, he'll get out. He'll get to serve 6 more months. He'll have to serve 6 more months in home confinement before he'll be out on probation. So, and again, like we're talking about things that get away from the core of what Daniel Hale did. And Daniel Hale is an important drone whistleblower because at the time, President Barack Obama, as he says in his letter to the judge, was lying to the American people about the standard that was being used in deciding who should be targeted and assassinated. He said it was an imminent threat standard. And Daniel Hale says that's not how it was in Afghanistan. If we could just say that you could threaten any U.S. interest whatsoever, you could be put on the list and we could kill you. And so it's not imminent threat to the United States. It's a much looser standard. And also, he pointed out there's a period of time of like 5 months where 90% of the people killed were civilians. They weren't even alleged terrorists.
I wonder on that note, like you already touched on, obviously why Obama didn't want to go forward with the charges because it would, fuck up his good name and probably his parties with Jay-Z and Don Cheadle.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, exactly. That's our next segment, but which will be boring. But I wonder if this has spanned 3 presidents now, and I think that is an interesting thing of like going back to how this can get away from the actual like meat of the subject of like we know why Obama shied away from it. I have my own opinions about why Trump went into it more, which I think was just a general kind of like New York tough guy, don't leak shit, or this was what'll happen to you. And then now we have it happening again with Biden. And I wonder if you have any other thoughts on that of like, why we can't like get the fuck over these people, and like why we can't. I think this connects to Julian as well of like why we won't let this go, even if it's not, especially like with what we were talking about with Julian, why it's like not even in the public eye. People aren't paying attention to what's going on with Julian at Belmarsh prison. So like why does it keep going on?
So for Julian, it's because the CIA holds grudges and they don't want to let it go. And if you look at the case and you know how CIA Director Mike Pompeo came out and attacked WikiLeaks and Julian Assange in the first months of the Trump administration, it's very obvious. And that was right after they published these Vault 7 materials that exposed some of the most sensitive cyber warfare operations that are being conducted against the CIA. And also, the way WikiLeaks put out this press release, I'm not saying it's wrong to do it this way, but it was antagonistic. They say, this is embarrassing. You lost control of all of these files. And what's your security like, CIA? How come you can't protect these materials from being exposed and being seen in broad daylight? So that's why this continues. It doesn't matter that the public doesn't care about Julian Assange. It doesn't really matter that politicians in the United States may not honestly care whether Julian Assange is put on trial or not. because the CIA is going to be relentless and make sure that the Justice Department brings Julian Assange to trial, and that they could send a message to people not to cross the agency. Trump is very fascinating to me because of that fact that a lot of people will reflect on the way in which he benefited from the Podesta emails, the Clinton campaign emails that were published during the campaign.
I love WikiLeaks, that thing.
Yeah. And what it comes down to is, like a lot of issues, it was all talk. It was all just a lot of hot air. And that's what we got from Trump. And for people who don't accept this, I usually point to the issue of Syria too, because like he could have supported Assange, he could have supported Edward Snowden, but when it came down to it, he wasn't willing to cross the people who are powerful in the Republican Party, like Mitch McConnell. You know, I followed what was happening in the days and the couple of weeks before his last days in office. He was seriously considering a pardon of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. And they said, you know, you've got this trial coming up in the Senate, and if you don't want us to vote against you for impeachment, you're gonna make sure that Julian Assange and Edward Snowden don't get pardons. And so he backs off because he's gonna protect his own skin. And I get it. I think any politician probably would do the same. But I think when you pull back and you look at the whole length of his presidency, you see that he never really cared about these people. He just would talk about them when it was advantageous, and seemed like his supporters were joy-filled that WikiLeaks was on their side. And I think their side should be put in quotes, because I'm not sure that WikiLeaks was ever on the side of Trump and their supporters. That's just how it got represented by the establishment media that believed they had some kind of commonality with what Trump was after, which was sinking Hillary Clinton's hopes of becoming president. So like for Trump, to me, these prosecutions have to go on because he's under siege from the press that are spinning these yarns on a daily basis about the campaign and his ties to Russia. And there are people in his administration who are speaking to CNN and these other outlets about how he's concealing certain information and how he's covering up, and they're revealing details that point to things that we could have long debates over whether they're scandalous or not, just because, you know, we probably would go, well, Obama did that, Bush did that. You know, this is a standard bureaucratic way of doing government. And so, you know, you kind of wonder, like, why are we so worked up? Well, it was the personality of Trump, and they wanted to pin this on him. And so I think in guarding himself, he was willing to tell the Justice Department that they had the green light. They could go after however many leakers they wanted to go after. And that's where we had it's a real scandal. Like, as much as I'm not necessarily in supportive of the establishment media, I can't get behind subpoenas for reporters. There were a lot of subpoenas that were sent out to journalists because they were doing stories, and they wanted to uncover the sources for those stories on the Trump administration. That was in May or June. There were a bunch of stories about this. And it ties into the prosecution against Julian Assange. So I think what we need to see is that continuity. You know, I think we recognize the continuity between administrations, at least if we're doing good commentary and analysis of the system of US government, we recognize what never changes no matter who you elect. You could elect a Republican, you can elect a Democrat. They elected Trump, but I don't really believe that Hillary Clinton would have been any better for Julian Assange, because I don't know if they would have dusted it off and gone forward the way that Trump did, but she joked about killing him with a drone strike. So what does that tell you? That doesn't suggest to me that Hillary Clinton wants to pull back on Espionage Act prosecutions. I think she would embrace them. She would allow them, like Joe Biden's allowing these prosecutions of Assange and Daniel Hale. And so I think that we need to see the continuity here and how it all builds and stacks upon each case. That's what's fascinating when you really understand what is happening. You go all the way back to the early 2000s and post 9/11, and you see how they discover they can use the Espionage Act against Thomas Drake, an NSA whistleblower, who's revealing issues related to the constitutionality of a program with a private contractor named ThinThread and how it's sweeping up all of this data. And there aren't any protections for people's privacy as that information is being collected. And this is before Edward Snowden. And so it's at the time that we know there's warrantless wiretapping at the NSA as revealed by Mark Klein of AT&T. And so you go forward and they tried Thomas Drake, then they're going after John Kiriakou, they're going after Chelsea Manning, they're going after a leaker at the State Department named Stephen Kim. Then Edward Snowden comes forward. They're going after Edward Snowden. They continue with these, under Trump. They have Terry Albury. They go after Reality Winner. They indict Daniel Hale, as we've discussed. And if you look from case to case, they all build on one another. I left out Jeffrey Sterling. Jeffrey Sterling's case started in the late 2000s and spanned from the mid 2000s on into 2015 when he had a trial and then he was sentenced to prison for 42 months. They all stack on each other and they get harder and harder for whistleblowers to defend themselves. Each case is about taking one more element away from the accused so that they can't defend themselves and claim they're a whistleblower when they're prosecuted under the Espionage Act. And what we really need to address is that this law from 1917, the Espionage Act, is being used to stamp out some of the most important dissenters in our nation's history who are challenging the warfare state, challenging national security and intelligence agencies who we need to hear from, but the risks and costs to their lives are so tremendous that it ends up being that they're crushed in ways that overshadow completely what they are trying to reveal. And so we don't end up talking about the information. We end up talking about these cases and we end up talking about the government does to them. And, on one hand, that informs people of the nature of our punishment system and how cruel it is. But on the other hand, that sends a message to people in these institutions of what will happen if they come forward. And that makes an example out of them. And it says to me that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who have something to reveal right now, who are sitting there silently and not telling us about something we need to know. And that's a very sad fact. But at this moment, I am certain that there are Snowdens and Chelsea Mannings and Daniel Hales and Reality Winners, and they're not going to take any steps to tell us what we need to know because they don't want to be crushed, and I don't blame them.
I think that was a really powerful way to probably conclude, but I feel like we have to ask, since we kicked off our last interview with you asking about Rush Limbaugh's death. We have to ask about the
do you still feel sad?
Yeah.
Oh, it's occupied my time so much. I've just been going through the archive of clips that I have on my old Windows laptop that I keep. It's just I have a specific right-wing talk radio Windows laptop.
I'm thumbing through my rosary as we speak.
So Kevin, I have to get your opinion, if you have one, on Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, Andrew Cuomo. So this is actually a whistleblower story
Great.
because the Attorney General's investigation into his office revealed that he had a culture of fear and intimidation in his office. And I found it to be a really important report. I think the Attorney General did some tremendous work. This person, Letitia James, you won't normally hear me come on and praise the work of government officials because I'm usually talking about how they target whistleblowers. But Letitia James, a Black woman in New York, has done some fine work. She's also been supporting Amazon workers who are blowing the whistle against their abuses in the workplace. But here, she documents, or the team that she had investigating thoroughly documents the way in which people were afraid to come forward and reveal anything corrupt about Andrew Cuomo, not just sexual harassment. And that if they did cross Andrew Cuomo, they would be singled out, that these people around Cuomo would go to work trying to get you eliminated or purged and make sure that you basically couldn't work anywhere in any place important in New York again, is the sense that I get, that there would be serious repercussions for you crossing Andrew Cuomo and trying to expose any sort of scandals. So we wonder why we didn't get a whole lot of information from people in his circle about the nursing home deaths that are like such a horror, such a nightmare. And I think more serious than the sexual harassment that came forward, which is not to downplay its significance for the women who were mistreated and handled grossly by Andrew Cuomo. But people dying is always going to be worse than that. And so, yeah, it's a whistleblower story. I mean, I think when you get right down to it, and also the sexual harassment, this woman, Lindsay Boylan, she comes out and she says on Twitter that she was sexually harassed. And the first thing they do is start talking about how they can discredit her in the press so that she cannot effectively undermine Andrew Cuomo's image. He's this like pandemic king or something. And we're supposed to revere him. And they are talking about how they can get an op-ed printed. You probably saw the people who have resigned and disgraced from these liberal groups who Time's Up. Roberta Kaplan was involved in helping Andrew Cuomo draft an attack piece against this woman who's alleging sexual harassment. Get out of here. And then there was a person at the Human Rights Campaign who got in trouble, and he was consulted. So you have people from these liberal groups who have been #MeToo all over the place. And then this happens and they're protecting Andrew Cuomo. I'm sure, like, I'm positive that you could go through and find dozens of tweets where they talked about the Access Hollywood tape from Donald Trump and the grab them by the pussy and everything, and that like they were always wanting people to know all about that. I think I just lost my audio, so I can't hear you.
Can you hear us? No.
There's no seamless way for me to do this. Let me. My computer just switched the audio to my microphone, and there's no way that I can hear because I don't have anything plugged into my microphone. So let me take these off, and let's do this. I would like that. Now I think I can hear you.
Here's okay.
Yeah,
all good?
It's just you're gonna have an echo possibly, but
you're all good.
We're almost done. I was pretty much done with my thought, but the thing I was gonna say is that this whistleblower story is one. No, I'm done. You can cut that out.
Well, I did want to, I just on that point, to wrap it up, like, I do think it's interesting with the Cuomo thing, who is like the new stuff that came out from him was, to anybody who's been paying attention is kind of old news, but I'm glad it's coming to fruition. But I think it's kind of worth pointing out that this really started with, what's his name, Ron Kim, just having the bravery to stand up and go, this guy's a fucking bully. He does this to everybody. And this is like, he was just saying something that everybody in New York politics seemed to know, but no one was willing to say. And this kind of, I can't remember what he was. He was like an assemblyman or something. But it was just this one guy was willing to go, no, this guy always does this. And it really started this tidal wave. I wish the tidal wave would have started with, obviously, the nursing home deaths. But I'll take a win where I can. But I think it's important to note that one person speaking up did kind of start this. It seems to me.
Yeah, and the other point that I meant to say before the little technical issue was, you see how a workplace that doesn't do anything to manage sexual harassment or deal with people like Andrew Cuomo, it really is about power. Fundamentally, it's salacious. People like to print what sort of things he's doing because it's gross and people will share it and it's clearly offensive. But those things happen because of the power that he's wielding, and the sexual harassment that goes on in the workplace goes hand in hand with the kind of workplace that has a chilling effect that says, don't speak out. If you do, we will come down on you hard and we will find a way to remove you so you do not have the same job or career that you had before you crossed us, in this case, Andrew Cuomo. So yeah, I think it's a really important story because it shows how power is wielded. And like you say, the bullying, that someone finally said, no more, I'm not going to take this. And that was when everything all started to fall apart. I mean, he had problems with his book because people were finding out how he abused taxpayer resources to promote that book that he wanted to probably use as a launch pad. I mean, I think there was chatter about him pursuing a presidential campaign, and he likely was ready to go at some point in the next 4 or 5 years because he had done so well at fashioning this leader image during the pandemic. But now what people remember is what he said in his final speech to the camera when he didn't repent. He didn't take back anything he did. He called it cancel culture. And as much as I am someone who has departed from a lot of the mainstream progressive left and said that there's cancel culture on the left, there's cancel culture on the right, and there's a long discussion we could have about what is happening here. High-ranking officials who, in a rare moment, are met with accountability and forced to resign, that is not cancel culture. That is accountability. That's what happens when you do something that you can't publicly defend. And so if you don't want that to happen, if you don't want to, in the words of Andrew, get canceled, then don't grope women. Don't grab. He was grabbing a state trooper. Don't do stuff that upset. Yeah. And also, be smart, because you can get away with nursing home deaths during a deadly pandemic unlike anything this country has seen in the last 100 years. And you're going around grabbing people in positions that are going to then not like you anymore and turn on you. Like, he lost the state troopers because he sexually harassed a New York state trooper. I don't think you probably, if you're the governor of New York, want them to be against you. They do your security. They also are going to start speaking to the press about how they don't like what you do at your events. They see everything you do. They're there providing your security. Anyways, yeah, so in the end, we are left with this image, and I put the icing on the cake. It just confirms everything we said. He's the liberal Trump, but people would just be like, that's ridiculous. Like you're just talking because you want to sound like you have some kind of edge as a person who does media on the progressive left. It's like, no, like you literally, he is liberal Donald Trump. Like this is him, and he embraces some diversity, but the way he acts is almost identical to the way Donald Trump acted as president, or so it seems. Andrew Cuomo doesn't get on Twitter and go nuts, but that's about the only difference you can come up with, is that he knows how to make statements that are flashy and engaging, but although not anymore. I mean, this last one was incredibly embarrassing. And to me, I'll shut up after this. Michael Bloomberg fell and hit with a thud during the Democratic primary and left and was dogged by sexual harassment. And there were things that came from him being the person who was involved in stop and frisk and policing. And he was bounced from that race. And that was the guy that they wanted. And then they had to settle for Joe Biden. So I'm so glad that Michael Bloomberg has fallen. And then now we have Andrew Cuomo, who's fallen. And these guys who get to act like neoliberal saviors of the United States, it's really nice to see them tumbling.
It feels good.
Tara Reid could still come back to hurt Biden as well. Just throwing that out there. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We may hit you up at the end of October if you would be interested in coming back for a third update about Assange.
Yeah, talk to me then. I should be around, and I'll be doing plenty of media, I'm certain. But if not at the end of October, the first week of November for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you again, and hope to talk to you soon.
Yep, talk to you later. Bye.
That was a great conversation with Kevin Gosztola. Again, really thoughtful guy. Love that he agreed to come back for another update.
Stay tuned for part 3. And please keep listening. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at VFAS Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dan.
Phil AG was here.
Like, subscribe, shit post, hate mail, send Dan emails.
Yeah, send me emails.
Yes, and we will be back with you with more adventures next week.